Okay, when I say the Olympics, what pops into your head? Probably massive stadiums, right? Flashing cameras, athletes from all over the world, gold medals, the whole shebang. But what if I told you that the very first Olympiad, way back in 776 BCE, had, well, none of that? It was something completely different, and figuring out what it was tells us so much about the ancient world. I mean, the difference is just wild. Our modern games are this huge global spectacle. They're mostly secular, and it's all about that athletic glory. And let's be real, national pride. The ancient games, though, totally different vibe. It was a regional Greek festival, a deeply religious ritual. And the grand prize? Not a chunk of gold. It was a wreath made from olive leaves. That's it. Right. So that's the big question, isn't it? If it wasn't about gold medals or bringing the whole world together, then what was the point? What drove the ancient Greeks to create this tradition that we're still talking about thousands of years later? Well, the first and, honestly, the biggest reason, it all comes down to religion. This was not a sporting event that just happened to have some gods mentioned. No way. It was, first and foremost, a religious festival, and it was all for one god in particular, the big guy, Zeus. And you gotta think about where this all went down, a place called Olympia. Now, this wasn't a major city like Athens or Sparta. It was a sacred sanctuary, a holy site dedicated to the king of the gods. That fact alone changes everything. You didn't just go to Olympia for the sports. You went on a pilgrimage. You went to worship. The contests themselves were part of that worship. You see, for the Greeks, peak physical condition, pushing your body to its absolute limits, that wasn't just showing off. It was seen as this beautiful offering to the divine. It was a way of honoring the gods by showing them the absolute best that humanity could achieve. The sport itself was a sacred act. Okay, so honoring Zeus was huge, but it wasn't the only thing going on. The games also played this incredibly important role politically and culturally in a world that was, well, pretty divided. They helped create a common Greek identity. It's so easy to forget this, but there was no single country of Greece back then. The Greek world was more like a patchwork quilt of hundreds of independent city-states, what they called a polis. And these places were fiercely proud, intensely competitive, and, yeah, very often at war with each other. And we're not talking about sleepy little towns here. We're talking about heavy hitters. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. These were major powers, constant rivals, always fighting for an edge. So the very idea of them all agreeing to put down their spears to watch a foot race, it seems kind of crazy. But events like the Olympics were one of the few things that reminded them that, despite all their rivalries, they were all, at the end of the day, Greek. And this is what led to something pretty amazing, the Olympic truce. It was a sacred proclamation. Now, it didn't magically stop all wars across Greece, but it did demand that everyone provide safe passage for athletes and spectators traveling to and from Olympia. The fact that this was actually respected most of the time just shows you how much power and authority this religious festival had. All right, so that's the big picture stuff, the religion, the politics. Now let's zoom way in. Let's talk about the very first event and meet the very first champion. Yeah, forget the crazy packed schedule we have now with dozens of sports. The first Olympiad in 776 BCE had exactly one event. Just one. That's it. There's a real power in that simplicity, you know? And that single event was called the stadion. Basically, it was a dead sprint, a straight-line foot race for about 192 meters, which was the length of the stadium track itself. Just a pure, raw test of speed. This was the foundation. Everything else grew from this one race. So, who was the guy who won this thing? Who's the very first recorded Olympic champion in the history books? A man named Corybos from the local area around Olympia. And his job, get this, he was a cook. Not a general, not a nobleman, not a professional athlete, a cook. I just love that detail. It makes this ancient history feel so incredibly real and human. It's pretty amazing, right? From this one simple foot race won by a local cook, this incredible legacy just explodes. The games very quickly became a way to measure so much more than just who could run the fastest. Okay, this is honestly one of my favorite facts about the ancient games. They became so important, so regular, that they actually became a calendar. See, ancient Greek historians didn't have one single numbering system for years like we do. So how did they date things? They'd say something happened in the third year of the 701st Olympiad. A sports festival literally became the way they organized and marked time across their entire history. So, what was the prize for all this effort? Well, like we said, no gold medals. The physical reward was that simple wreath woven from the branches of a sacred olive tree near the Temple of Zeus. But the real prize, the thing everyone was really after, was something called kleos. It's this powerful Greek idea of undying glory, of fame, of renown. Achieving kleos meant your name, your story, would be remembered forever. And to them, that was worth more than any amount of gold. So when you boil it all down, that first, simple race in 776 BCE did way more than just kick off a sporting tradition. It created this powerful formula, this model where religion, a shared cultural identity, and fierce competition all merged into one. And that combination truly helped shape the ancient world. What a legacy, right? The First Olympiad took one simple sprint and transformed it into a cultural cornerstone for an entire civilization. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the shared events, the rituals, the competitions that define our world today? Thanks for diving into this with me.